Alright guys, let's start with the first deck that there's going to be some changes to. There's only 3 new cards in this deck that I'm going to show you, and I'm going to explain a little bit why this is and why I think this is super powerful. So the first deck we have here is an Evolved Shaman. Basically took the exact Evolved Shaman shell still with like Convincing Disguise, Mug Pools, and Nulls. The new card that we're getting here is called Blazing Transformation, which is choose a minion, discover one that costs 1 more to transform it into. So now you can involve your Gold Giant Nulls and you're guaranteed to get a really good outcome. If you look through all the 10 mana cards that there are in the game, if you scroll all the way down, you'll find that the cards you most likely want are going to be Certain Aetherius if you need healing, Local R if you need immediate clearing, Stoneborn General if you want something sticky, or, and this is the new interesting one, we have Tadius here. And Tadius is a 10 mana 11/11 undead. Taunt, your outcast cards cost 1, which is also the reason why I've included Overlord Drakuru, which is a 9 mana 6/8 rush Wind Fury. After this attacks and kills a minion resurrected on your side. For example, if you have 1 mana left, you could evolve a Null with Blazing Transformation into a Tadius, play your Drakuru, and rush down the enemy's board, building your own board and trying to overwhelm them. I think Blazing Transformation is a super good card. It will do really, really well on Gold Giant Nulls. And something else that you're going to be very successful with, in my opinion, is you can also use this on enemy minions. So if your opponent buffs like a super big minion or makes a really big minion, you can often discover a really bad drop for them to transform the card into. To like slow down, for example, a Paladin that has been buffing their board. Or if your opponent has a 1-drop on board, I know there's a lot of 2-drops in the games, but there's always the chance that if you evolve one of your opponent's minions, you could get a Doomsayer, you know? And all of their board will disappear from using Blazing Transmutation, and this is gonna do for some great fun and some great highlights. Alright. No time to waste. Next deck. Next deck is, I think, I showed a Dragon Paladin that I think is going to be really cool on stream as well. It doesn't have the highest win rate, that's why I didn't include it here, but check out the VOD from my stream or come by my stream and I'll show you the deck as well. But for now, for Paladin, I've selected to go with a pure Paladin because that makes really good value out of the Purator. The Purator is a new card. It's a 5 mana 4/6 taunt battle cry. If your deck has no neutral cards, draw a minion of each minion type. And especially light rates, there are elemental beasts. Okay, so what you can do on turn 5 is because you can play the Purator. If, let's say, you have Order in Court and the Purator in hand, you could play the Purator on 5. It will draw both Light Raised, one as an elemental, one as a beast. Then it will draw this Goldwing as a dragon. It will draw a Seafloor Savior as a paladin. It will draw a Sinful Sous-Chef as an undead and fill your hand. And then on the next turn, on turn 6, for example, you can play Order in the Court. Then you can play all these cards to immediately overwhelm your opponent's board. And then on turn 7... you're still going to be able to get the Countess off the top because that is going to be the most expensive card in your deck, right? And of course, if you don't draw the Purator, you still play Order in the Court the exact same way that you used to before. But yeah, if you have both in hand, you play the Purator first because it will draw you all the light rates, and then Order in Court on 6 will still get you your Countess ready on 7, so you can have fun with some discovered legendaries. I think this will be really strong. Goldwing, 4 mana 3/5 rush battlecry if you're holding a mech gain Wind Fury, since there's Seafloor Saviors as well as the Goldwing itself, and the Purator in a newer update will also become a mech. That has already been confirmed. This card will probably be a 3/5 with rush and Wind Fury, and the reason why this is good is because it will do really well against slower decks, because for Kel'Thuzad and Seal of Blood, for example, this card, if you play it proactively on board and it sticks, and you buff it with Kel'Thuzad and Seal of Blood with like +6 attack, and this immediately gets 9 attack and then does 18 damage to your opponent. So the burst potential of this card is absolutely amazing. That's why I included it. Might not be the strongest, but the Purator definitely is a really good addition to this deck. Moving on, next up we have Undead Shadow Priest, which I don't think was such a bad deck before, but it has gotten some really powerful cards. The new cards in here are Mindseer, which is a deal 2 damage to a minion. If it dies, deal 3 damage to the enemy hero. So basically, you're getting Touch of the Netrusm, but as a negative card. So you can kill your opponent's board while pushing damage. And then you have Rotting Necromancer, Battlecry, Dredge. If it's an undead, deal 5 damage to the enemy hero. So the idea of this deck is that you play a bunch of undeads like Haunting Nightmare, Shadowed Spirit, Brittle Skin Zombie, right? You resurrect those with Bone Caller, which is really strong, and with High Closest Basilev. And you push a lot of damage over time to their opponent's face, and then at the end, when you have like a bunch of Brittle Skin Zombies or a bunch of Shadowed Spirit die, you can then go Zarella and do even more burst damage to your opponent. While in the same time you control the board, of course, with your Shadow Hero power. It's a very good board controlling hero power. And Shadow Claw's Needle, that is a 1 mana 0/3 weapon. After you cast a shadow spell, deal 1 damage to all enemies and you lose 1 durability. Yeah, there's no cheap minions in this deck, you will see, but you can re-get them with Animate Dead. There's another version I built on stream, which has a little bit more undead to be making sure that the Rotting Necromancer goes off more reliably. But this is one of the versions that you can try out. I've built a version with, like I said, with more undead, because this is not always guaranteed to go off, but time will tell what the best version of this deck is, and if we needed to add any more undead cards to the deck. But feel free, of course, to experiment around it as well. The code will be in the description as for all the decks. Alright, we're moving on. Another class, Hunter. For Hunter, I felt like the new zombie spell was very, very good. It infuses some of your infused cards like Sylvanas and Huntsman Altimore while doing early board control. So I think it has a very good place in this deck. It also works with Frenzied Fangs. And your deck is a little bit slower. But the reason why I chose this deck in particular is because if you play Lorthamar on 7, and then on turn 10, this will buff double the stats of all minions in your deck. And if you have King Crush still in the deck, what you can do is you can play Faithful Companion, which is the new spell. It's a 7 mana, discover a beast from your deck and summon it. Mana source 10, also summon a copy of it. So on turn 8, for example, if you need to, you could summon a really big Hydrologen or a super big Mountain Bear, like a 10-12 taunt that your opponent has to come through. And on turn 10, the biggest and most fun thing, and this is why I included this deck in here, is you can go and choose King Crush, which is buffed to a 16/16, summon 2 of them, and OTK your opponent with little to no effort. I hope you guys will have some fun OTKing and making some highlight clips of charging some King Crushes into your opponent's face with 16/16s. Next up, we have old favorite Thief Rogue. Thief Rogue gets the new spell Ransack, which is a 0 mana spell, deal 1 damage to a minion. If you played a card from another class's turn, deal 4 damage instead. I put it into 40 card shell because this deck, especially likes to have an activator for Private Eye. Sometimes you don't even need to do 4 damage for this to be okay. This deck has a lot of value. This has a lot more, this has a decent amount of Discover as well. But dealing 4 damage in a slower deck and having a little bit more board control is kind of nice. I'll link the description below. It's kind of the same 40 card deck. You could, of course, also play the 30 card deck, no problem whatsoever. But I think 40 card is a little bit more promising these days. What I've done from the previous version, I took out Viper and Theotar to just be a little bit more board centric and better able to control the board against some opponent's early game aggression. And then you can control the game a little bit with Ghastly Gravediggers, and you don't have to really have the Theotar. You can, of course, slot in Viper if you face a lot of Paladins or if you face a lot of Warlocks. And then, last but not least, I have here a triple Frost DK. I could have also included a triple Unholy DK. I think both of these do really well with the new Construct Quarters. The Construct Quarters is a location for Death Knight, 3 mana, location with 3 charges. Destroy a friendly minion to summon a 4/5 undead with Rush. You usually don't have a minion stick on 3, but some of the things you can do on 4 are really nice. Like, for example, you could immediately play a Lady Death Whisper, and then you can destroy it on turn 4, make it a 4/5 rush, control the board, and then you probably have, immediate usage out of Horn of Winters, You never have to think about hand space because you can destroy your minions right away. You can destroy your barons, for example, if you need extra draw. You can destroy your Harbingers. You can even hero power and then destroy your hero power. You won't be having any usage like for the extra corpses that you're generating with this. But then again, this card will help you with early board control. And early board control later then translates into being able to push more damage, and then you have to do less damage via burst, and you can concentrate on a few other things. The Construct Quarters, in my opinion, is a good addition to every single deck for the Death Knight class. So if you have any deck that has the Death Knight class right now, I think you should be putting it in there. Of course, this code will also be linked in the video. I hope you guys really enjoyed this one. I hope to see you guys a little bit more on stream, because I'm going to be making a few more decks. Especially, I'm going to be looking a little bit at some other Paladin decks. I'm going to be looking a little bit at some new Druid decks. And I have something really spicy in Shaman that I want to cook up, so I hope to see you there. And as always, remember that you're valuable, that you matter, and I hope that you have a great day with the new expansion.